So this next bit's going to be a lot shorter. I want to show you something, though, that's a very important piece. But they did a 20-year study following children who'd been diagnosed with a neurodiversity, and following them for 20 years and their families for 20 years and doing frequent interviews along the way and surveys. And what they found is that there was a set bunch of steps that everybody went through. Not everybody made it to the last step or the last stage, but these were the same 5 steps for everybody, and this is what they are. And by the way, this doesn't just work for neurodiversity. I have seen over and over again, this can work for cancer. This can work for the most horrible labels you can imagine putting on a person, kidnap victim, those kind of things. It can actually work for as well. Stage 1 is when you become aware of a difference, okay? Hey, something is off, something is wrong, or this kid's not talking, or this kid can't pronounce these words, or seems behind in these milestones, right? And for the person, it's when they become aware of their differences, right? So then what do? Well, you go and get the label, okay? Stage 2, you go to get a label. And if it's a speech problem, you better go to a speech therapist and get a label, right? And they're going to say, oh, well, you have aphasia or whatever. I don't know what your guys' labels are, but I'll pretend. I've heard some of them. And the person then learns, okay, I have blank, and this is what that means, right? At this point, it's almost completely a list of challenges. So the third stage is accepting the label. And again, this is where, at this stage, the person or their family or both may need to go through the stages of grief, right? And everybody's going to do this at different speeds. But at this stage, you're trying to accept that, yep, I actually have this, and understand what it means in terms of how's my life going to be different because of this label? How are my outcomes? How are my challenges? What strengths might I even have from this? Okay? And so this is where a lot of people stopped, right? Some people, I'm going the wrong way. Some people stop here. I'm different, but I'm just going to hide it, and I'm never going to go get a label for it. This happens all the time. You guys will encounter tons of undiagnosed autism. Utah used to be the highest rate of autism in the United States. Does anyone know what we're actually ranked now? We have one of the lowest rates of autism in the entire United States. Is that because there's less autism in Utah? No. If you've been in Utah, you know there's a lot of autism, okay? So my people are everywhere, right? And not just at FanX, right? It is very much all over. But a lot of people stop here. They don't want to talk about it. There's a stigma. They'd rather have any label other than autism or some of these. And you'll see that especially with biological females with autism. They don't get diagnosed. If you do get diagnosed, a lot of people stop there. They're like, okay, I've got this label. Let's never speak of this again, right? And a lot of people stop here because this can take a long time. This can take years, many, many years. Some people never reach acceptance. But those who keep moving go on to the next stages, right? The next stage is compartmentalization. This is the stage where you realize this is a part of me, but not all of me, right? I have this, but my life is so much more than this. And so it's like those little kindergarten cubbies that we all loved, where, yeah, okay, autism is here, but also this, right? There's so many other cool things about me. You guys know who Temple Grandin is? Temple Grandin is one of the first people who made speech therapy an industry, because the interventions that she got for speech were what allowed her to become a university professor at Colorado State, where she still is, a professor in the animal science department. And if you ask her identities, she's world famous for being autistic, but she will list animal science professor, #1, chunk of her identity. #2, being a woman. 3, loving animals. 4-ish or so is autism for her, right? It's there, and she's willing to talk about it, but she's like, it's weird, everybody just always wants to talk autism. But this part of me, not all of me, right? Alexis Weinman was the first diagnosed autistic Miss America finalist. And again, compartmentalization, I think she's past compartmentalization now, but she has a good quote here about how autism is just a piece of us, right? And you can't let it define you. You can't overcome fear and anger. You certainly can't overcome autism, but you can't let them define you either. You can, however, find ways to pick yourself back up and get back in whatever fight that got you down to begin with, because you'll find out that no matter the situation or obstacle in your way, you can and will rise to the challenge. She's another one where speech therapy has made a huge difference in her life. She is now a disability lawyer in Montana.
Miss Montana is surrounded by more than 50 other beauty queens on stage, all hoping to become Miss America. But for most of her early life, Alexis Weinman spent her time alone.
I was very quiet because I couldn't say anything right. I was picked on for the way I spoke. I really didn't have any friends.
Her parents knew there was something wrong, but their small town of Cut Bank, Montana, didn't have the resources to help them figure out what it was. And then at the age of 11, after years and years of searching for answers, a doctor finally put a name to Weinman's condition: pervasive development disorder, a mild form of autism. Typically, children with autism are very intelligent, but very quiet, socially awkward, and they don't respond appropriately to interactions with other people. Typically, they don't end up becoming beauty queens either. But Weinman says one day she simply decided not to let her condition define her.
I learned to really accept myself and my autism, and I realized that my autism isn't what defines me. I define what is autism. I joined the cross-country team, the cheerleading squad, speech and drama, and I started making a lot of friends just by getting involved and pushing myself.
She entered the Miss Montana pageant as a way to prove to herself she could do anything she set her mind to.
By the time I graduated, I had done so many things I thought I'd never be able to do, nothing stopping me from trying. And I fell in love with the program. Good thing, too, because I won. I wasn't expecting to win, but it's funny how things work out sometimes.
That win put her on the national stage in Las Vegas.
Miss Montana, Alexis Weinman.
Weinman made it as far as the top 15 and won the America's Choice Award for garnering the most online votes. She says the whole experience has been an amazing ride.
It's been a challenge, but I've enjoyed it immensely. There are times when I do feel a bit overwhelmed, but those are going to happen in life anyway, whether you're going to be in Miss America or not. So I'm willing to take all of that on.
Dr. Sanjay Gupta, CNN, reporting.
This is her saying, yeah, there's a piece of me, but not all of me. It doesn't define me. And the final stage that the most successful people reached was transformation. And this is the stage where people start saying, oh my gosh, I'm actually, not only do I have it, not only do I accept that, not only is that a part of me, it's an important part of me, and I'm glad I have it. And again, if you've seen people in your life with some of their hardest struggles, how many of you have had hard struggles? And, okay, there should be every hand. If you haven't had hard struggles, God bless you, they're coming, okay? But oftentimes, how many of you looking back on those struggles would say, like, I wouldn't trade what I've learned or what happened because of that struggle, right? Many of you have reached that point. And if you haven't, I promise you can get there. That's what transformation is all about. I'm thankful I've had to deal with this, right? So as we look at the neurodiversity spectrum and all the different types of neurodiversity, we've got to see that everyone's brain has strengths, and we can transform those differences from something that is a tragedy or something to be ashamed of into something that could be really cool, okay? This is an alternative way to look at the spectrum of neurodiversity, which I use with my students and is very helpful. So we're going to talk about celebrating neurodiverse strengths, but first let's have another little quick self-reflection, right? Take 2 minutes, right? Look at those 5 stages and how have you seen them? And what do you do to help your student be able to move toward acceptance, compartmentalization, and transformation? Okay, go ahead. Take a couple minutes. You guys know who Bethany Hamilton is? Okay. What is Bethany Hamilton's, when she became aware of a difference, what happened? Her arm was bitten off by a shark, okay? Suddenly she became aware there's a difference, okay? She went to the hospital and was told, hey, you have arm bitten off by a shark syndrome. I don't think they quite phrased it that way. And then she had to go through a stage of acceptance, learning to dress herself again, learning to heal, learning to surf again, right? If you've seen Soul Surfer or heard her story. And yet, again, she's famous for not just having one arm. There's a lot of people with one arm. She's famous for also being a successful surfer, being a very solid person in terms of her values and her religion and her family, and also just the fact that, yeah, she does lots of other things with her life. So having an arm bitten off is just one piece of her, no pun intended. Stage 5, transformation. Have you guys ever seen an interview with Bethany Hamilton where they ask her, if you could have your arm back right now, would you? Any guesses what she says? She says, no, absolutely not. And they'll be like, well, why? And she's like, well, I don't need it. I can surf with one arm, and I'm giving hope to people with all 4 limbs by having this arm missing. I think God let this happen for a reason. That, again, I am not there. If a shark bit my arm off tomorrow, and there was some magical pill I could take to get my arm back, I am taking that pill. I am right there, okay? But I have reached that with autism. If someone had a magical cure for autism, I wouldn't be taking that right now, right? Now, back when I was 13, yeah, I might have. Even though I didn't know I had autism at the time because I was too high functioning, which just meant I was better at hiding it, and also it was an island in Alaska, so like everybody's weird. But anyway, I was extra weird, which is great. All right, so we're gonna, oh yes, question.
What would you suggest? Like, so a lot of us work with elementary students that may or may not even.
Okay, so working with elementary students, sorry, I'm trying to repeat for the recording. But
What, is there a way do we introduce the stages to them? Do we talk about it?
how to introduce that? That's a great question. Again, working with adults, I just flat out go through it and I actually walk them through examples of people who have reached it. And I'm going to show you in this next stage, I'm going to show you a ton of people who have reached transformation on all of these, and they'll talk about why they're grateful for blank, okay? Whether it's autism, ADHD, anxiety, learning disabilities, even depression. There are people who are grateful for that. Again, I've not reached stage 5 on depression. The few times I've been depressed in my life, I don't look back with gratitude yet. But certainly my son with depression is not there. But though he's doing so much better right now. So how do you introduce it? Again, the same way you'd introduce any other concept, right? You're going to try and make it visual. You're going to try and tell stories around it. I'm probably not doing the best job today of telling stories, but I'm trying to, because stories are how our brains learn more than any other way. Okay, and these can be stories that are visual, auditory, combination, tactile, walk them through. Anything you can do to provide a vicarious experience is going to be one of the most powerful teaching experiences you can give. And so helping them see this, even just saying like, hey, again, their cognitive capacity to understand this might also be different. But helping them see like, oh, okay, this person isn't aware that they even have this. A lot of times when you're working with elementary school kids, no one's ever told them what's wrong with them. And they just know something's wrong with them. So I didn't have a label when I was a kid. Guess what labels I put on myself? I'm dumb, I'm weird, I'm a nerd, I'm a geek, I'm different, something's wrong with me, I'm broken. Okay? Pretty awful labels. You can see where the depression came from. Okay? Because while other kids were out practicing basketball or singing or math, okay, I was practicing beating myself up. I'm really good at it. Okay? Whatever we practice, we get good at. I am so good at beating myself up. And how many of us are? Right? And so helping them have an actual label and understanding that this isn't a tragedy is wonderful. So I have a friend who's an LCSW, and he diagnoses autism and ADHD and stuff all the time. And he will literally buy a cake and have like, congratulations, you have autism, and bring that to the family. And when they come in and be like, hey, we've run all the tests, your kid's got learning disabilities. And he'll talk about the strengths first. They're going to crush it here, here, and here. They're going to struggle with this. We'll get to that. We can learn that. But this is going to be awesome because of this. And they're also going to talk about their personal strengths. So again, get creative. But if you think about it, there are ways to help them understand, I have blank. And then from going to there to, I accept that I have blank, and there are some limitations, but there's some strengths too. If they can get out of elementary school, knowing that they have strengths and they have value and that they are worth it, and that life is going to get better after they get through all the hell that is junior high, that's priceless. Some final points and tips, and then we'll be done. Again, neurodiversity gets better. Maximization, plans, empathy, and pacing. Neurodiversity gets better. All of the studies are showing that you have a developmental delay. So over time, things get better. And even when you have a lot of disabilities or even intellectual disabilities on top of the neurodiversity, they're getting better. All of the studies are showing it. Anthony Hopkins. Do I think my Asperger's syndrome has helped me as an actor? Yes, though I can't say it helped my marriages. I definitely look at people differently. I like to deconstruct, pull a character apart to work out what makes them tick, and my view won't be the same as everyone else. I get offered a lot of controlling parts, and maybe that's because how people see me, and maybe I'm very controlled because I've had to be. I don't go to parties, I don't have many friends, but I do like people. I do like to get inside their heads, which is kind of creepy from Hannibal Lecter, but when kids get out of school, they're much more likely to find success. Being in school is the only time you're expected to be good at everything. As you get into college and stuff, you can specialize. And as you get into adulthood, you can even like not do math. Okay? Won't read this. Social skills and social opportunities get better. A lot of people with autism even get married. And as Temple Grandin says, you go to work and you find friends at work. because that's where adults make social connections, right? Oh, this is Amy Gravino. She was our keynote speaker at UVU last year. But she talks about, I wish I could go back and tell that 11-year-old me that was suicidal and thought she was the ugliest, most terrible person on earth, that someday you're going to be a woman with a master's degree in her own company who's helping make the world better for people like you, and that people respect me and that you have friends. She's like, I wish I could tell him that. Temple Grandin, the thing about being autistic is you gradually get less and less autistic. You learn, okay? You get less and less problematic with it. Now, stop worrying about normal. Don't make them look like a neurotypical. This is what you want to share with those parents, okay? Accepting neurodiversity, celebrating neurodiversity means realizing that neurodiversity is not some broken version of normal. They're a normal version of them, okay? You are a normal Jeff Glenn, okay? Congrats, all right? Just as you are. Trying to be like everybody else did not help Pinocchio become a real boy, right? And the kid who thinks I'll be real when I'm normal will never make it all the way. Will never be able to feel like a normal person. And you can talk to autistic self-advocates and they say this, right? I've spent decades of my own life striving to make myself over into that elusive normal and hating myself for not succeeding. The more normal I tried to be, the less normal I secretly felt, the more of a failure, right? I've learned to fake being normal, right? I can do it, but here's the secret. I can be me. It's okay to be me. And they need to hear that. So normal is not your goal, right? Learn to be your best self and love it. That's true for all of us. Now, I'm not saying don't go for any of these normal goals. If you have a cultural norm that they want, go for it. But they need to pick it. They need to say, I want to live independently. I want to drive. I want to date. I want to have kids. Then good, great, go for it. Prepare for it. But do all neurotypicals go to college? No. Do all neurotypicals live on their own or date or marry or stay married or have kids? Do all of them drive? No. Again, normal is what? It's statistical thing. So our goal is not normalization, it is maximization, right? Normalization says you've got to be fixed. Your disability is something to get rid of. Normalization says you need to look the same as the neurotypicals, but what we're looking for is maximization. And maximization, this is key. It says, I accept you for who you are, let's figure out where your strengths and challenges are, and let's get a plan to get you where you want to go. It's going to actualize your potential as a neurodiverse individual and help you become your very best self and achieve your very best future, instead of saying, how can they become the best approximation of everyone around them? It's not going to work, okay? So maximize. To do this, you need a plan. Make sure your plan, over time, make sure that the person themselves with the disability can run their own network. If they can't, they won't ever be able to become fully independent, and that's okay. All of you right now have support networks, okay? There are things you don't do for yourself, right? I'm going to the dentist next week, right? Because I saw that Castaway movie and I'm not interested in doing my own dental work, right? Every one of us have people we rely on, but as long as we're running the network, we're independent. It's when they can't run their own network. That's the problem. Last tips here. Remember, empathy is a two-way street. You're the neurotypical? Great, you're supposed to be extra flexible and better at communication. So pick up the slack, people, right? It is ironic that autistic people are expected to have trouble with insight into others when so many NTs have trouble with insight into us, right? It's called the double empathy problem. Oh, if I'm having trouble understanding you, it's because you have autism. If you're having trouble understanding me, it's because you have autism. The answer is always your autism's wrong, okay? And we need to help them to work on their social skills in a positive way. Here are some tips. This is in your handouts too. Instead of talking about them as if they're not in the room, remember they can hear you and always assume they're listening and understanding. Instead of assuming that autism defines them, remember they get to be an individual. Instead of believing their perspective makes them less reliable, remember that that's your own bias there and try to get into that world and understand what they're saying. And if they're reporting bullying or abuse, you darn well better take it seriously. If they're in pain, it might be something you can't even feel or see or smell or taste or touch, but they're feeling it. Instead of allowing the world to teach them their autism or their disability is a bad thing, tackle it head on, reinforce how awesome they are and where their strengths are, and instead of loving the child but hating their disability, just love the child, right? If you're talking to someone with a neurodiversity, respect our accommodations. Consider our timing, like is this the right time? Is this the right setting? Minimize the sensory overload if it's there. Don't require us to make eye contact or take our silence personally or our hyperverbals or our nonverbals. Try to sincerely connect with our interests and strengths, but also as a person. Allow us space to process or comment. Try to ask one question at a time and give time to respond. Don't make multiple requests. Don't keep changing the topic. Like I said, I was on a podcast with Debbie Worthen. She is ADHD. And to this, I don't know what our podcast was about. I don't. Every time she'd ask a question, I'd be like, oh, let me download that file. And I'd be like 3 sentences in, and she'd like, phew, brand new question, and we go somewhere else. I'm like, oh, I guess we're doing this now. Okay, so I have no idea. Don't listen to it. But no surprises, right? Try not to surprise us. Prepare us, prime us. Even if there's like a fire drill coming up or something, you can be that trusted adult who tells them like, hey, there's going to be a fire drill today, and here's what we do. Here's a script, okay? Teach them about social idioms, slang, social skills, friendship skills, and even meta-social skills, like being able to deal with their failures or to understand that there's different levels of friends and each level of friend. Like, you could probably make a strong statement about your opinion up here, but not with this girl you just asked to the dance, okay? And teach nonverbal communication. Again, I don't have time to go through that today. There's a little bit in your handouts. This is a great technique. It's called the social autopsy. I didn't invent it. It was Dr. Richard Lavoie. But basically, when things have gone really bad, if you're the person with neurodiversity, you often don't know what happened. How in the world did I ruin this friendship? How in the world did this person start? Why did they ghost me? Why did this happen? Being able to sit down with them and ask them to explain what happened and what they intended, and then help them identify where the mistake was, and then give them a social story or an example that they can learn from for next time, and give them even some homework when they're ready to try, like, let's try this new approach. So with my son, I'm like, okay, so let's practice. What would you say if you were like trying to, you know, if you hate Star Trek and she likes Star Trek, what would you say? You know, how could you be like, oh, I guess I could say that, oh, Star Trek, that's interesting. I haven't really been into that. Tell me why you like Star Trek so much, right? And all of a sudden, it's like you don't have to change your opinion, but you can get interested. So this is in your handout. Last tip. Pace yourself. Again, this is not a sprint, it's a marathon. So PACE is just an acronym that I use. Make sure, as you're working with the kid, that there's a clear purpose. Why are we doing this? Priming, they're ready for it. Predictability, they know what's coming next. Patience, that you're able to give them the time that they need to be themselves and develop at their pace. Antecedents, that you're taking care of what happens before you're asking for their behavior. Autonomy, you're giving them lots of choices. Aids, you're giving them lots of tools. Affinity, you're giving them lots of connection. Consistency, clarity, consequences, compassion, making sure that you're working on the environment as much as you're working on the person. Executive functioning supports so that they can make better decisions, but letting them make more and more decisions as they get older is critical. See through the behavior to the brain wiring, and then see through that brain wiring to realize that Jeff Glenn is a person, okay? Focus on strengths more than challenges, celebrate every little success, and never, never, never give up. Okay, it's almost 11:30, and I promised I'd be done. So ask yourself, what are the 3 biggest things you're going to take away from this training? And how will your practice and your personal approach be different because of what you've hopefully learned today? And if you have any more questions, I'm going to stick around for the Q&A groups you guys are going to have later here for a bit. But thank you so much for your time. Thank you for what you do. And thank you for the difference you make in the lives of so many people whose brains are a little different, but have amazing potential and deserve every chance for success. So thank you so much.